Hello everyone. Welcome to today's session on verbal woes. Now, obviously this is meant to be an interactive session, so in case you have any queries, you can post your queries into the chat box and I will try my best to address them. At the same time, I did want to address a few questions that have come to me from students. So, let me just start with that presentation. If you feel that your question has still not been addressed, just wait for me to pause and then you can ask whatever you want. I do take frequent pauses, so don't worry, we'll have enough time for Q&A. So let's get started. So a couple of things that I have noticed over the years is that most of the problems that people face in VARC relate to 4 areas. And last night I thought long and hard about how I can categorize and make some sense out of all the questions that students have been asking me over the years. And I realized that primarily these 4 areas are where we can capture most of the VARC related issues. So for example, many problems, many problems are related to just reading, nothing else. And part of it, I think I blame our own tendencies to not read or stay away from reading or reading only textbooks. So reading is an issue. The second has to do with comprehension, which is a slightly different thing altogether. So for example, some of us read, but we zone out completely and we don't understand what we are reading. So there is a difference between reading and comprehension. After that, there comes question solving. Some students say, you know what, I can read, I can comprehend, I can do all of that, but I can't solve questions. So clearly, question solving is a different skill. Moving on from there, test taking. Some of the problems that we have are related to our test taking strategies. It's not specific to VARC, so you might also see the same things happening in other areas. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to categorize some of the questions that have come from you already in these 4 areas, and I will try my best to tell you a way out. Now, of course, I can just show you a path. You have to walk that path. And in case there is anything that you want to ask in the middle, it's a very non-intrusive way to ask. If you just put a question into the chat box and I will pause and I will answer that question. So let's get started with reading. Now, this is one of my favorite areas. So there is a lot of content for me to cover here. My reading speed is very slow. I'm unable to attempt more than 1 or 2 passages. Now, first of all, if you have just started your preparation and your reading speed is slow, then I don't think that's a problem that we need to be concerned about right now. But if the same problem persists maybe 2 months later, then yes, it will be a bit of an issue. So as of now, if your reading speed is slow, there is only one way out. And I think a lot of you can probably guess what that way out is. Any ideas, people? You have to read. It's plain and simple. Yeah. So the more we do something, the more efficient we get at it. I know that it doesn't really make sense when people tell you, you know what, you just read and you will get faster at it. But think about it. If you want to become a faster swimmer, you swim. If you want to become a faster runner, you run. If you want to become a faster reader, you read. It's like any other skill, so it's not fundamentally different. Now, I do see that some questions have started coming in. Let me just finish this bit and I'll take a look at the questions. Okay, so there's one more thing I wanted to talk about. I zone out while reading. See, when I'm reading a very boring text, then I also zone out. So part of it is boredom, part of it is focus. All right. Now, we do have a method that we will talk to you about, and this is also a part of Tony Sir's blog. So if you have read that, then you will probably know what I'm talking about. It's called the paragraph to question method. So of course, we will try to read the passage and we will try to understand as much of it as possible, but assume that nothing is working at all, at all. What do? A shortcut strategy is read 1 or 2 paragraphs and after that, try to see if you can answer any questions based on whatever you have read. So this will probably prevent that problem of zoning out because you're constantly engaging your brain. Another thing that you might want to do if you constantly zone out is write down a few words. Normally, I'm not an advocate of writing. I try to minimize the writing. But if you are falling asleep while reading, then that might be the only way out. Okay. So it's okay to write a few words. Don't write entire paragraphs. Now, let me just take a look at some of your questions. The first one here is, I concentrate too much on RCs, due to which there's very little time for VA, and that's what I keep thinking about even when doing the fourth RC. Okay, so is it a bad strategy to only focus on RCs? Not really, not necessarily. In fact, my RC is much stronger than my VA. It's not that VA is very bad, but I'm always hopeful of getting more marks from RC than VA. So I always do the RC first and then I go to VA. What I want you guys to do is to try both strategies. So in one of the years, I attempted CAT with VA first, right? Not RC. It didn't work out so well for me because I ended up spending a lot of time on VA, and that left me with very little time for RC, which is actually my strength. So then I reversed that strategy for the next 2 years, and I found that that works better for me. So in case you feel that you tend to be carried away by RCs, try starting with VA. At about 12 or 15 minutes, stop VA, stop whatever you are doing in VA and move on to RC and see if that helps. Also, you don't necessarily need to do the fourth RC. Most of us have been talking about how you need to attempt only 1/3 or half the paper to get a decent score. So maybe try to limit the number of questions that you're attempting. So that will also leave you with some time for VA. On the whole, guys, I think a good breakup would be somewhere around 26, 27 minutes for RC and the remaining time for VA. So see if you can stick to that. Okay. The next question that I see here is, if we start preparing for CAT now, are we too late? Okay, it's never too late. I know it's a cliched statement to make, but it is genuinely never too late. So when I was starting to prepare for CAT, for us, the timeline usually was about 5 to 6 months. Now, as of now, you guys are much better planned and you have a far better strategy than I used to. So you guys probably join maybe 8 months earlier or even a year earlier or even a year and a half. So in that case, what happens is that you have more time to do other things also. You don't have to sit and study the whole day. Even if you want to take a break on 1 or 2 days, it's still okay. Now, the only thing that happens when you start a little bit later is that you have to accomplish more in less time. But that is not to say that you cannot accomplish that much. In fact, I know for sure that a lot of students who join us for a very long-term program don't get serious until, say, June. So it's human tendency, we procrastinate. If you're in the same boat, don't worry about it, you're not late. Okay, now those of you who feel that when you are attempting a mock, somehow you don't get the question, but later on when you solve it, you get it right. I think that's fairly natural and normal because when the stakes are high, we're a little more stressed out, right? So what you should normally think about is what happens when you're trying to cross a very narrow bridge over a river. You will be a little scared. There will be this fear that I will fall into a river, right? Now imagine that you're crossing the same bridge about 6 inches from the ground. All of a sudden, you will not be afraid, even though the bridge is the same. The analogy here is just to tell you that whenever you're taking a test, you are afraid. You're afraid because you feel your performance will dip, and what will that do to my psychology? So, if you're scared, your brain is not very efficient. What you need to basically do is try and relax. It's just a mock test. Okay. It doesn't mean you do whatever you want to. You do need to have a strategy, but it's not the end of the world if you don't do well. So you just need to relax when you take the test. And I would also suggest that you try and see if test anxiety is a problem for you. If possible, come up with a few methods to calm down and feel centered before you start taking the SIMCATs, and do that before every test. Okay, that's pretty much it. The second thing that is happening for a lot of people of your generation and even mine is that we're constantly distracted by something else. So if the focus is not there, what happens is that we're reading something, but our mind is not fully focused on it, and therefore we're not able to get all the information that we need at that time. So in such a scenario, the problem is not that question, the focus is our own, the problem is our own minds and our inability to focus. In which case, the solution is twofold, and you can pick which of these two you want. If you feel focus is a problem, read. Reading is a very good activity to center yourself. In fact, I would advise maybe reading a book a few hours before the exam also if you have a later slot. But as of now, read every day, read for at least half an hour. If you can extend it for an hour, that would be great. And if you say, you know what, I can't read to save my life, then close your eyes, breathe deeply, meditate. That's the age-old technique to center yourself. So any of these two things. Um, okay. Abstract passages are very tough, and I start fearing it even before reading it. Okay, I think that would probably apply to a lot of people. Abstract passages are tough. I'm not going to deny it. At the same time, sometimes abstract passages present you with easy questions. Now, here you can take one of these two options. I'll always give you options for everything. So, option one, know that it is an abstract passage and say, you know what, I am bad at abstract passages. I will not do it. Okay? Are all the passages going to be abstract? No, of course not. You will have easier passages to solve. Could there be more than one abstract passage? Yes, the section can get difficult. So we always want to be prepared for the worst, right? And that is why we have given you module 4. So those of you who are our students, please take a look at module 4, solve the abstract passages there, do the practice exercises, and solve the practice sets for module 4. They're pretty fantastic. And if you want to not be afraid of abstract text, read a lot of philosophy. Not a lot, not for a year, but maybe at least a week. 7 days of reading philosophy, and I think part of that fear should go away. I select 4 RCs from the IMS portal, then try to solve it under 30 minutes. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Accuracy is around 60%. Okay, so if you can solve 4 RCs under 30 minutes with 60% accuracy, I think you're doing really, really great. And I think you should probably contribute to this session a little more. But how is this approach? See, honestly, I think VARC and accuracy between about 65 to 70% is good. So is 60% bad? No. Could it be better? Yes. The only thing that you might want to take care of is that if you're doing all 4 RCs, don't try to do all 16 questions. If you're absolutely unsure of something, you're allowed to leave a few. So maybe that will help your accuracy. Otherwise, I think your approach is great if you're able to manage it. Is there any method for selecting the sequence of RC during mock? Yes, there is a method, and we do talk about it in class also. The first RC that you do should ideally be the one that you read very, very fast. So it has to be the one that is easiest to read. So whenever I start a test, I prefer to start with a question that is not very heavy. At the beginning, I want to just be able to focus on solving. And I don't want to start with a very difficult text because then I might get a little frustrated or distracted. So start with an easy passage. The other side of it is that let's say that passage has very difficult questions, but still you read it in 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes. I'm allowed to leave 2 questions if I realize that the passage actually has very difficult questions. So how much time did I actually waste on that passage? Not too much. But if I start with a difficult passage, even if there are easy questions, I may not be able to answer them. So there's really no point if you don't understand the passage at all. So this is a subjective decision for most people. Look at the first paragraphs of all the 4 RCs, read it or skim read it, decide the one that you think will be easiest for you to read. Usually this should be something descriptive with easy language with a topic that you're comfortable with. If you get something like that, then that's the one you start with. Now, I would normally keep an abstract text towards the end. Anything with very difficult words or long sentences, I would keep for later. Later means it can be the third passage that I solve. It will not be the first 2. So the first 2 are going to be the easiest passages in terms of language and topic. That's pretty much it. Can I directly start solving CAT questions 10 daily continuously for 2.5 years with rigor? Will I be able to understand quants? Okay, so this is a verbal session. I'm not really sure if this question is addressed to me or to mentors in general. Can you directly solve CAT questions? Yes, you can. See how the experience is, because all of our starting points are very, very different. So for example, let's say if my VARC is very strong to begin with, I may not necessarily need to start with easy questions. I might just directly start solving CAT papers and it will work out, and that's perfectly fine. But if you feel that you are a little weak, then I would want to start off with something easy, simply because the human mind tends to give up when it is faced with a task that is too challenging. So you need to start off easy, give yourself a break, increase the level of difficulty, increase your endurance, and then start challenging yourself. Don't give yourself an impossible task to begin with. Okay, so I'm not saying CAT is impossible. I'm just saying, why start with something so difficult that you're likely to give up on it? Because that's not really necessary at all. After attempting 2 RCs and almost all VA, I'm left with 5 to 6 minutes. If I had 5 to 6 minutes left, would I do another RC? Yes, I think I would. So normally my reading speed for an RC is about 3 minutes per passage, even if it's a fairly tough RC. And that's not because I'm a very fast reader. That's primarily because I'm a very lazy reader. So if I feel something is not important, I'm just kind of going to look at it and get past it. So if you have the time and if you have the reading speed, yes, you can use the paragraph to question approach for that next RC. What that basically means is that you need to ensure that you're reading 1 to 2 paragraphs, search for any questions that you could possibly answer on the basis of that text. Yeah? Just give me 1 sec to take a look at your questions. All right. So I think I have, I'll try to reach 80% accuracy. Okay, if you do that, please also tell me how you did that, because 80% accuracy in VRC is pretty fantastic. And if possible, share it with your peers as well. Okay, just to continue, if your reading speed is not very fast with 5 to 6 minutes to spare, you might also want to check out 1 or 2 VA questions to do. If your reading speed is fast, another RC is possible, and you may not be able to answer all the questions, but even if you answer 1 or 2, that's not bad. Okay, now let me get back to my presentation that I spent so much time on yesterday. That's not true, but I did spend some time on it because I wanted to make sure that I cover at least these pointers. And some of these questions have come from you. Okay, so just take a look. So in case you forgot what I was talking about, because I did, if you get lost or zone out during passage reading, there are 2 things you can do: write down a few words or try the paragraph to question approach, these 2 methods. Moving on, I end up rereading the entire passage when I'm trying to answer questions. So see, we always tell you get the big picture, get the big picture. In your first reading, you need to understand the thought flow and the main idea, right? You don't have to retain everything, but you do need to have some sense of where the information is located. Okay, so if you have completely forgotten where something was written, that means there was a problem with focus, or that there is a problem with some retention. So in that scenario, again, reading every day will help because your brain will become more efficient at processing textual information. Secondly, maybe you want to write down 1 or 2 words per paragraph just to remind you what each paragraph talks about, right? So if you're rereading the entire passage the second time, it could also mean that the first time you read it too fast, at least too fast to comprehend for yourself. So then slow down. As of now, speed is not your main concern, accuracy is your main concern. So let's avoid this situation as far as possible. And let's also move on to the next question. I tend to miss out on information when solving specific detail questions. So what happens is that a lot of times we can't really frame a shadow answer because the question is about very specific things in the passage. For example, which of the following can be inferred from the passage? This is your typical question, right? So then we work from the options to the passage. So I take option 1, I check the passage, I take option 2, I check the passage. And here what we are basically doing is scanning for relevant information. Now, if you tend to miss out on information while scanning, then this is also a skill that you need to specifically work on. Now, scanning normally to a lot of people denotes something like skimming or reading very fast. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is looking for specific information in the passage, that kind of scanning. So if that is a problem, what I would want you to do is to solve more passages. Okay. So in such scenarios, only reading is not going to help. Ultimately, you have to take an option, you have to be able to go back to the text, scroll up and down, and make sure that you're getting better and better at it. So the other thing you have to ensure is that you're always solving this on a screen, on a computer. Please don't do it on your phone because scrolling on the phone might be very different from scrolling on a screen. Please don't do it in a physical book because it's far easier to search for information in a physical book, also because you will tend to write and underline. All right. So solve more passages online, and that is the way out for this issue. Now let me just take a look at the question box one more time. Okay. All right, so I'm going to move on. The last one I did want to talk about. I don't have a reading habit. What do I do? Well, the obvious answer is try to develop one. But I also understand that if I just tell you, oh, start reading, it's not going to happen. So people tell you, you should read Eon or you should read this or you should read that. I would say read something as long as it is in English and it makes sense to you. When you're trying to build a habit, give yourself a break, start off simple and start off easy. Don't try to read stuff that you're likely to quit on. If there is an English newspaper that comes to your house or you have a subscription to a paper on your phone, read that. Read one article, read 50 words, read a paragraph, read one article or two or three. It doesn't matter. You need to read something. So if that means that you are reading only about 200 or 300 words in a day, but you're doing it every day, that's a good way to start. If that means that you have to start off by reading comic books, that's fine, but at least start. If that means that you have to start off by reading kids' books, that's okay too. Please start. But you need to make sure that you're reading at a fixed time every day. And my favorite time to read is just before I go to sleep. So maybe that'll work for you also. Also, you don't really need to make notes or write down a summary. You just have to read, try and feel peaceful about your reading, and fall asleep. Okay, that's all you need to do. Now, moving on. Comprehension. So, initially we were dealing with all the woes relating to reading. Now we're going to talk about comprehension. Here, I actually don't have too many points. We all understand what comprehension is, right? It's reading and it is trying to understand. So, what are some of the problems that you might face in comprehension? Um, I'm not a major fan of rereading. I believe that if you read it correctly the first time, you should get whatever you need to out of it. So if you are rereading, if you do not understand the passage and you have to read it twice or even thrice, that basically means you did not read efficiently the first time. So the way out for that is slow down. And in case even slowing down does not help, then start writing. In case you feel that even writing is not helping, then get one of these language models to translate text for you. Okay, that's finally the solution. Or form a study group with your peers and try and see if you can explain passages to each other or summarize passages for each other. Another method that you could probably adopt is read a short article and then try to record yourself trying to summarize it and see how much you're able to remember. So there are multiple ways to improve your comprehension. It does involve you putting in some active effort. If you don't like writing, just try saying the summary out loud. If even that is not okay, just try reading very slowly, but read every day. Let's move on. Now, we do tell you that after you have read the passage, you need to figure out the central idea or the author's intent. And yes, this is very, very important. So we mentioned the 5 pause approach, and I tell you that one of the most important pauses that you can take is that second pause. In case you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's okay. So the second pause is very, very important. Why? Because after you have read the passage, if you just close your eyes, breathe deeply, and think for a minute, what did I just read about? You should be able to say, I think this is what I read. And if you're not able to say that, then maybe you didn't read it right the first time. So make an effort after you have read every passage. After every passage, you should be able to say, this is what I think the passage is talking about. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be great English, but there has to be something there. So if you do it every day, if you do it after every passage, it's going to work. Now, again, I think all of you were very enthusiastic right at the beginning. What topics should I mainly focus on for RCs? I wish I could tell you. Honestly, if I could, I would. But I think what I could probably give you is an idea of what kind of passages we have seen in the last few years. So we've normally seen some scientific passages. We've normally seen something related to history. And for some reason, there are quite a few passages on Chinese history or literature or Chinese society. For some reason, I'm not saying it's going to happen this year as well, but there are. There could be passages that relate to geopolitics, that could relate to the environment, that could relate to business or economics. There could be passages relating to society, sociology, culture, or psychology. So the thing is that it doesn't have a fixed syllabus, which is why we tell you that you have to read from diverse sources. So if you have been a science student, try reading a lot more of humanities. If you have been a humanities student, try to read a lot more of science. Just make sure that you're comfortable with every type of text. And those of you who do not like to read about literature, music, art, philosophy, please read about literature, music, art, philosophy. If you feel that I'm contradicting myself, the point I'm trying to make is that initially when you're building a reading habit, try to take it easy. But gradually, yes, you are supposed to challenge yourself. You are supposed to try and see, let me see what else I can read. Last week I was reading science. This week maybe I want to read about literature. Maybe the next week you want to read about psychology. Maybe the next week after that you want to read about AI. So as long as you are covering everything, you'll be safe. All right. Now, let's move on to the next area of verbal woes, is question solving. There are primarily two types of questions that I have seen if I have to make a very broad classification. There are questions that are big picture questions, and there are questions which are somewhat more specific. For the big picture questions, that second pause is going to be very, very important. After you read the passage, ask yourself, what did I read about? If you're able to figure that out, then the big picture questions are not as difficult. Now, here I also want to say that summarizing the passage is not really what we want you to do. Because even when you're summarizing the passage, you're still not getting the main point a lot of times. If it is an argumentative passage, then the main point is usually the author's argument. It is what the author wants you to do or think. It is whatever the author approves of or disapproves of. It is whatever the author says we need to do or should do. So that is what I need to get. If it is a descriptive passage, for example, then my main idea kind of does sound like a summary. If it is an analytical passage in which there are research studies, I'm going to focus on the conclusion of those studies. So the way that I arrive at the main idea in different types of text is a little different. Now, what about the specific questions? What about the reasoning questions? So in class, we do cover reasoning. I have specifically discussed how to solve a strengthen the argument question or weaken the argument question or an assumption question if it appears. Now, if you have forgotten these strategies and if you're simply going about solving these questions blindly, then you are unlikely to get the question right. It is verbal, I agree. To some extent, it feels intuitive because, come on, who has not been studying English since school? I mean, I know that it's not a first language for any of us, but for most of us, we are able to maybe walk English, talk English, and to some extent speak English. So ultimately, while it is intuitive, there is a method to the madness. For different types of questions, there are different methods that you have to use. Please learn these methods. If you are an IMS student, we try to teach you these methods in class. If you're not an IMS student, please find your resources where you can learn these methods. But if you don't, then others will have an edge over you. All right, now moving on. With regard to question solving, I think this is by far the most common query that I have heard. I get stuck between two options and I end up choosing the wrong one. If this happens to you, first of all, join the bandwagon. It happens to everyone. But if it happens to you too frequently, then it means you need to correct something. The thing that you need to ensure you start doing is come up with a shadow answer. If it is a main idea question, you should kind of know what the answer is before you look at options. If the question refers to the author's argument, then you need to know what the author's argument is before you actually look at the options. If you're not doing that, then this getting stuck between two options is going to be a perennial issue. So shadow answer is absolutely critical. It may not be possible for every question, but it is possible for a lot of questions. Now here also there are some misconceptions about what a shadow answer is. In a main idea question, I do need to be able to paraphrase what the main idea is. Agreed. But in certain very specific questions, I don't even need to do that. All I need to do is read the question stem. For example, if the question stem says, from paragraph 3, line number 2, it can be inferred that. I need to go to paragraph 3, line number 2, read it, understand it, and then look at answer options. So basically, you need to prep your mind to receive the options. Don't just jump to the options and hope that the right answer will come to you. It doesn't happen that way. All right. So, shadow answer and looking for information in the text before looking at options. These are the two ways out. I understand the passage but can't get the questions right. I used to wonder why this happens, right? And then I spoke to a lot of students and I realized that a lot of students are reading and they're summarizing, and that's very good because you're putting in a lot of hard work. But if you're not solving passages, then it's not the final game. Then you're just kind of training yourself to run and be fast and building strength, but you're not playing the game. The game is reading the passage and answering questions. So, by this time, all of you need to start solving 2 passages every day. If your life is extremely difficult, 1 passage every day. How long will it take? It will take 15 to 20 minutes. That's all the time that you need. You can solve it anywhere. Carry your books with you, carry your phone with you. It doesn't matter how you do it, but you should do it. All right. So please ensure that you're solving questions every day. That's the way out of this one. Again, it's time for me to take a break and take a look at your questions in the chat box. Oh, wow. Okay, there are a lot of questions. Reading daily or solving 4 to 5 RCs daily or doing both. Okay, so doing both is the best. I would always say try to read every day, preferably before you sleep. Don't do it first thing in the morning because then you might fall asleep. You don't have to solve 4 to 5 RCs. I just said this, right? Just try and make sure you're solving at least 2. And if you're very fast, very efficient, maybe you can do 3. But let's not burn out because we still have a very long way to go. Once we're done with a specific topic from any module, how to revise it after a few months in VARC. Okay, so in VARC, the best way forward is just practice. The only thing that you might want to revise is some critical reasoning concepts and grammar concepts if you're studying grammar. The rest of it is not really conceptual, it is skill based. And the best way to refresh those skills is to make sure that you're solving questions every day. So if you do 2 passages every day, most of those skills get refreshed on a daily basis. This is RC. Now, when it comes to VA, please do not leave solving parajumbles till the end. That does not work. Please do not leave solving summary questions till the end. You still need to take time out to practice those. Now, again, if you're an IMS student, you know where the practice sets are located. Please spend 2-3 days solving parajumbles until you feel a little comfortable with them, at least, if nothing more. Same goes for summary questions or odd questions. So what I would normally do is say, you know what, this is my VA week. In this week, for the entire week, I'm not doing any RC, I'm just solving VA. So that's all you need to do. And then maybe 1 month down the line, you say, okay, I think I want to do some more VA questions. So I'm again going to have a VA week. And that's all you need to do. There's really no going back to concepts that you need to do for VARC all the time, unless you've completely forgotten or you've not touched your books for a long time. And for that, we have the pre-class video. I'm facing an issue with the type where we need to infer the meaning of line quoted in the passage. Okay, I understand the question you're asking. So for example, what does the author imply when? Or what does this line connote? Or what does this line really say? That kind of a question. So when you're having trouble with these kinds of questions, the shadow answer method actually works. You read the line, you try and explain to yourself what the author is trying to say, and then you look at options. Try writing down the shadow answer if you feel that you're jumping to options too quickly. So if you want to create a bit of a gap between your reading the question stem and you're jumping to the options, actually write down a few words before you look at the options. Now, if your options actually matches one of your shadow answers, you can be fairly confident that you're going to get that question right. If the answer options do not match your shadow answer at all, that also means that you might not get that question right. In which case, you'll still try, but in case you're not sure, maybe it's a good idea to leave that question. So please do the shadow answer. I usually get the para summary questions wrong. Is there an approach I can follow? So para summary, there are 2 things that I do. One, try and come up with your main points before you look at the options because the para summary options tend to be very close. Okay? Also, in case you're not able to come up with the main points, at least mentally subdivide the paragraph. Okay, mentally subdivide the paragraph into 2 or 3 parts. Take the first part, ask yourself, what is it that this part is talking about? And maybe just jot down 2 or 3 words. Come to the second part, jot down a few words. Come to the third part, jot down a few words. So when you're practicing, you can write down a few things. When you're taking a test, maybe don't write, mentally paraphrase whatever you're dealing with, and then try to see which of the options contains those points. Here again, in an argumentative passage or argumentative summary question, I have seen that most of the options revolve around the argument of the author. So if you're able to understand the argument of the author, then you should be fine. Anything else? Okay. Should the option include all the points? Do the best that you can, honestly. I wouldn't say that you have to include all the points, but normally we see that there are 2 or 3 main points, right? So if you can include 2 to 3, that would be great. In an argumentative text, please ensure that you're including the author's argument. That's critical. I'm reading 2 articles daily and 1 RC daily. Okay. Any further to see improvement? So maybe I would want to reverse that trend a little bit, because as of now, if you have been reading for a significant period of time, maybe it's time to solve 2 passages every day and maybe cut down on the reading a little bit if you do not have enough time. Otherwise, as I said, 2 passages every day is a must around this time. If you're not a regular reader and you somewhat started your preparation, that's a very carefully worded question. So I don't know what somewhat started my preparation means, but still, if you're saying that, I have just started off tentatively, I'm doing a little bit of stuff, but I'm not very sure, what should you follow? Okay, so whenever you start your prep for VARC, what I normally say is you can jump into it, which means start solving passages. Okay, that's one way to do it. Or you can kind of dip your finger or elbow in it and then start from there. So what I mean by dipping your finger or elbow is start with reading. Ensure that you're reading for half an hour every day. Okay, this is a habit that you have to build. I cannot stress this enough. But just because I'm saying half an hour doesn't mean you can't read for 45 minutes or an hour. If you can do that, great. Particularly if you are only taking time off to prepare, I think an hour of reading you can definitely do. And start with 1 passage every day. Okay, a bit of reading, 1 passage, and maybe a little bit of vocabulary. So this is specific to VARC. When I say a little bit of vocabulary, I think about 4 to 5 words every day is a good pace to begin. After that, you might want to start making a note of those words and maybe revising it every fortnight or maybe revising it every week. So this is what I do. Monday to Friday, I learn new words. All right. Saturday and Sunday, I revise those words. Next week, Monday to Friday, I learn new words. Saturday, Sunday, I revise those words. By the time I get to the 3rd week, maybe I decide that I don't want to learn any new words. I'm just going to revise whatever words I have learned throughout the last 2 weeks. So that's a basic way to build your vocabulary in a very slow and steady fashion. But as I said, we start with reading and solving. Reading and solving. Those are the 2 aspects. All right. So I believe that we should be good. All right, let me then move on to the last bit of my presentation. In the meantime, you can think of other questions perhaps. Okay, now this point basically says that I cannot solve a particular question type. I think I've addressed this in a way. So maybe I can't solve parajumbles, or I can't solve central idea questions, or I can't solve inference questions. So the thing is that a lot of times it's a misconception. It's probably not that question type which is a problem. It is the fact that the passage was difficult or that question was difficult. So I would not arrive at this conclusion until I have taken at least about 5 to 6 tests. If across those 5 to 6 tests, you're consistently messing up on a particular question type, that means, okay, there is a flaw in your question specific technique. Then look at the way you are solving questions. Maybe revisit your class recordings or take a look at a few videos that tell you how to solve that particular question type. But until you have taken those tests and until you're able to establish a pattern, I don't think that this is a fair criticism of yourself. Okay, so let's not go there right now. As of now, I think your approach needs to be fairly general. Read and solve, read and solve. If I haven't made that clear enough, read and solve. Okay, getting back. Final part of my presentation had to do with test taking. So before I say anything else, I think I just want to say, please start taking the tests. I cannot stress how important it is. A lot of us have been taught to be scared of tests because we feel that the test is a judgment that is passed on us. It is not, okay? And these tests are simply meant to help you learn to take tests. So your tests are a learning tool. It's not a judgmental tool. The first 5 tests, you really don't need to worry about your score or what it says about you. If your friends and family are asking about your score, don't tell them, okay? You don't have to. It's something that you are going to see and you're going to use to get better. So please start taking the tests. Now, what is it that is related to test taking that could get in the way of your VA performance? I don't know how to select the right passage or the right question. So I want to make it very clear that in the VA RC section, particularly RC, you need to select at a passage level. Selecting at a question level for passages is very, very difficult and there is really no upside to it. So how do you select passages? We all know that we need to do 2 passages, right? Mostly. If we need to do 2 passages, I need to at least decide which are these 2 that I'm going to do. So please select these 2 right at the beginning. Since you're doing only 2 passages, you can easily take 12 to 13 minutes to do them. So take 2-3 minutes to just look at all the paragraphs, the first paras of each passage, decide which is the easiest to read and then select that. Now, within a passage, it's really very difficult to say which question is difficult and which one is not difficult. So yes, we can get to the fine tuning, but that will come after you have taken quite a few tests. As of now, I don't want you to worry about question level selection. The only thing that you need to do is, if you are unsure of your answer, you can decide to leave that question. For example, one passage has 4 questions. Out of these 4 questions, I might be able to solve 2 confidently. At least that's what applies to me, right? After that, the remaining 2, I'm in doubt. What do? I would probably mark an answer for one of those questions and I would leave one of those questions. I'm taking a calculated risk. Why am I taking a calculated risk? Because it works for me. For you, it may or may not work, but you have to see. And if you decide that I'm going to answer all 4 and you realize that every time I guess, I get the question wrong, the next time you'll know better. So please ensure that you're selecting RCs on the basis of the passage and not on the basis of questions. Once you've selected your RC, if you encounter a very difficult question or one where you are getting stuck, if you have not found an answer for say 3 to 4 minutes, it means it's time to move on and leave that question. Difficult passages have easy questions and easy passages have difficult questions. What do? Again, you still have to select at a passage level. Let's say that it is a difficult passage with easy questions, but you don't understand the passage, or you have to reread the passage twice to make some sense of it. You will have wasted too much time and you may not even get to the questions in time to answer them. So that's not helping anyone. I would always want an easy passage to begin with. Whether the question is easy or difficult in VARC is very deceptive until you actually start solving it. I don't think it's very easy to predict that. All right. The last one. I'm afraid of the VARC section. This is actually stuff that people have told me. All of us are scared of something, but that doesn't mean that we don't do it, also because it's not optional. So if VARC is a weakness for you, it may or may not turn into a strength. Okay, there are some people who overcome that fear and they're able to work through that section confidently. What you need to basically do is recognize that fear and say, it's okay, this is my weakness, but I still need to do well enough to get through the sectional cutoff. So your milestone for the VARC section has to be the sectional cutoff, which for most of us is 85 percentile. If you're able to maintain that 85 percentile consistently, you will realize that you are far more confident than you were a few months ago. So in VARC, if you're scared, just try to reach that 85 percentile, and for that, you know that you need to solve only about half the paper, pretty much. About 12 attempts, maybe about 8 correct out of those should get you to an 85 percentile, right? So It's okay for you to be scared, but it's not okay for you to not work to improve. After solving 2 passages and some VA questions, I only have a few minutes left. I think I already addressed this in the earlier part of the session. So when I said that these questions had come from you, they had actually come from you. So I'm not going to cover this right now. And now, if you have any further questions, I'm all open to whatever you want to ask. Short plan for VARC for only 6 months remaining. Okay. So till the month of June, I would probably want to clear that sectional percentile of 85. So for that, I need to solve about 2 passages with some VA questions. That pretty much means that I will spend at least about 3 to 4 weeks solving 2 passages every day, so that I get used to solving 2 passages in approximately about 25 to 30 minutes. All right, so that is part of the RC. Apart from that, I definitely need to spend about 1 week every month practicing VA. So 1 week every month, try parajumbles, try summary questions, try odd sentence questions. And my experience is that you should work on one question type if you want to get good at it. So if I'm solving parajumbles, just solve parajumbles for 2-3 days. There's no point mixing up parajumbles with summary questions. If you want to get better at summary questions, just solve summary questions for 2-3 days. And at the end of that time, you will at least become more efficient, if not become better. Now, by the time that you have reached June end, if you have reached an 85 percentile, that's great. Try to maintain it for about 2 to 3 tests. And after that, see if you can cross the 90th percentile or go towards the 95th. That basically means becoming more efficient more than anything else. So then, instead of solving only 2 passages with about 4 or 5 VA questions, I might want to solve 2 passages with about 6 to 7 VA questions. I don't need to solve the third passage even now. Or I might decide that I cannot increase VA, so I will solve the third passage, but maybe do only 2 questions or 3 questions and not all of them. So when I want to move from an 85 to 95, I will need to solve at least about 3 to 4 extra questions. Now this is a milestone that I might want to reach by the end of August. And once you have reached that 90 plus or 95 plus, then the journey to excellence begins. And that journey to excellence between 95 to 99 will come from becoming more efficient at testing. So then you're going to focus on taking a lot of tests regularly, coming back, revising your weak areas, and then taking more tests. And that's pretty much it. That's the plan. You need to cover up the lectures, test taking, how to cover backlogs. Okay. So if you're attending regular classes and you have missed a few classes and there are backlogs, in that case, I think the best thing to do is to figure out when you have holidays, holidays from class or holidays from work, and those are the days on which you cover your backlogs. Now, most of us, I believe, should be able to cover about 4 to 5 backlogs in a month, even if you have a really busy schedule. Why am I saying 4 to 5 backlogs? Because you do have 4 weekends in a month. Even if I devote one weekend to one backlog topic, I should be done. So as of now, for most of you who are confused between should I cover backlogs or should I focus on what is going on in class, unless module 1 for you guys is not done, the basics are not done, I would definitely focus on what is going on in class. Otherwise, in trying to complete backlogs, you miss out on what is happening in class currently. All right. And the backlogs are for your holidays, those days where you don't have class. Okay. While reading passages, if you come across a sentence that you don't understand, and it happens to me every year, okay, there are some passages where there are sentences that I have to read and reread, and I still don't get it. So what I normally do is I pretend I got it and I move on, because if I'm taking a test, I don't really have time to obsess over that sentence or that word. Of course, if you're practicing, finish the task. So if you're solving a passage and you come across something that is difficult, finish the task, try to answer the questions to the best of your ability. Once the task is done, then try to use the dictionary or Google or whatever it is that you use to translate that sentence or text into simpler English. Okay? So you can do that. Now, apart from that, are you asking me if you should pause in the middle of your reading and answering to look it up? No, I don't think it's a good idea. The only time that I'd be little concerned about it is if there is a question about that specific sentence or that specific word. Then if you don't understand it, then you may not be able to answer that question. But otherwise, pretend that you kind of understand and try your best to understand it. But other than that, you just have to move past it. Okay. So I believe that we have covered most of your verbal woes. In case you have any other issues that you would like me to cover, I'm still here for a few more minutes. Otherwise, we can probably close for a day, for the day. Of course, we will keep meeting, so this is not the last meeting. You can save some of your questions for next time as well. All right, folks. So I guess I should thank you guys for joining. I hope that I was able to be of some help to you. And I hope to see you next time for AMA, either verbal woes or some other topic that we'll be taking up.